I'm going to come to this very unusual title in a bit. The basic idea of this presentation was when it's an experiment that we did in our newspaper, and it's worked out well. So Oni sort of suggested that this will be a good idea for us to present as, and I'd like to make it as interactive as possible, because this idea is just to it's in an experimental stage what we have tried to attempt, and it's something that we believe may be a interesting concept as a new way of moving forward for sustainable wealth creation. We all know that the way the current economic models have been designed, obviously a very, very consumer-driven sort of an oriented model, and we being in a part of that industry where we encourage consumerism in one way or the other, and in some ways it's in direct conflict, where on one side our advertisements are telling you to consume, on the other side we're struggling with how to address this issue as well. And what is the way forward for India? Because with all the socio-economic upheaval that we are going through, is there a new way of finding a different model? So we thought, can we create a model which is less stress-oriented, minimum tensions, when you're expanding, do we expand for the sake of expanding? Is there a different way of looking at, a business model totally? And it's challenging because when you're in a line which is quite traditional. In some ways, it's in the West it's declining. Over here, it's booming to a certain extent. How do you look at this model in a very different way, where you have a audience which comprises of the young and the old, and from across all walks of life? So Sakal being 81 years old, this is our first issue. In 1932, when the founder started this paper, the concept at that point in time was radical. When I say radical, the paper was launched for the common man. And in 1932, to launch a paper for the common man was a very, very radical idea. It was ridiculed that, how can you launch a paper for the common man and, the masses at large. Obviously, the main intent was about the interests of the country. We were looking at fighting for independence. Independence was a key issue when this paper was launched. So we've evolved. A lot of models have evolved. A lot of changes have happened as the time has progressed, and we created something which we've been experimenting. We've been trying new things, and this is the latest model that we have in place. And we've heard of these concepts where usually a business is designed and honestly designed where you look for profits only. You're driven by profits. You're looking at how do I maximize whatever asset that I have, and in the process you come up with a model that today we all are now struggling, that is this the way forward? You've reached a certain stage now, let's expand more, let's create more wealth, and we take as much as possible. So we reversed this, where we said, okay, can we evolve something where you actually do achieve the result, and the result is not important in this particular model, the way we started out, but we said we have to look at giving in a way where perhaps eventually it becomes profitable for all stakeholders concerned. Now bear in mind that I didn't ask Unni, I said what is the sort of audience that is in this forum, and you come from different industries. And this is something that I believe can be applicable to any industry you're in. So it's something that we've sort of done in a way that it can be applied to your industry as well. Primarily, any model or anything that we face, we really have these two, I'll say enemies that we were dealing with. And these are universal. It's nothing new. I think in India we've become... we have this Ramayana, which most of you are aware, and in Ramayana there was this Dhobi who suspected, Sita's character and purity. And we, I think, somewhere, without meaning any disrespect to the Dhobis, they're working hard as a community, but we've become a land of Dhobis, according to me. Anything that anyone does, you have a suspicion in your mind. So whether it's a politician, if he comes up with an idea or an initiative, if it's an industrialist, the first reaction is that if anyone is doing something, there has to be some sort of an ulterior motive, or it's all wrong, or there's a problem with it. It's a very cynical, pessimistic, cynical, sort of skeptic attitude that we've managed to develop. And in the recent years, the electronic media has really gone overboard in highlighting something like this. So on one side, you have this whole pessimism, and on the other side, the rich who are sitting with a lot of money, we become like watchmen. So what you basically do is you create all this wealth and then you watch over it. So either you're in one category or the other, and you're trying to sort of find a model as to how to overcome these two enemies which are within the country. And I think this is applicable to many other places as well. So how do we create a model which is not driven by greed and fear? And we know, we've heard enough about the fear and greed model, that either you're greedy or you're fearing that you lose it all. So can we create something which is contrary to something like this? When we discussed these concepts, I've heard in many forums where companies will talk about CSR, we'll talk about corporate governance, we'll talk about giving to the society, philanthropy, and a whole bunch of things. And we actually look at these models and you really look at them seriously. And you really wonder whether that is a fact or is it a wish. And so can we do this at a level which is practical, which is something that anyone, if you're a manager, you're a director, you're an owner, something that you can sort of break down in a very simple form and probably go back and say, this is something that we can actually deliver on the ground. So I'm going to talk about this Pune bus day that we did on the 1st of November, and I'm going to give this story which actually happened. I was very reluctant, and I don't attend these media conferences or all these sessions and lectures and whatever, because I've been on committees, I've heard in boardrooms the best possible brains. We come in a nice 5-star hotel, we discuss ideas, we love concepts, we go back and everything is forgotten. And to me, that's an absolute waste of time. So when Unni suggested, I said, Unni, there's no way in hell I'm going to come for this, because it's just going to, bore me to death, and it's going to waste somebody else's time, and I'm going to bore someone else to death. So I said, I'm very, very skeptical about this, but those who know Unni, you can't say no to him. So finally, I did decide to come out with this, because I've attended these similar sort of meetings in Pune, for example, on issues which are social issues. So it's traffic, it's corruption, it's this, it's that. So I asked my editors, I said, let's go back and look at our editorials right from 1932. And what were the issues that my editors were addressing over the last 81 years? And you'll be surprised. Road, water, electricity, corruption, the same thing. It's almost like, and I'm glad that the public really has a short memory. Because when I looked at the paper, what do we say on the 15th of August? What do we say on the 26th of Jan? What do we say on the budget day? It's almost like every 3 years it's like a repeat hash which comes on. And it's almost that, I'm amazed at how come we get new readers and we keep on growing, because people read the same thing again and again, but they just forget. So it's wonderful for my business, because, you guys forget. So having attended these many meetings and, in boardrooms, and I've, with due respect to all the financial wizards and whatever, when they talk of economic policies and this and that in all these fancy hotels, when the time comes to actually implementing on the ground, nothing works, nothing happens. So we had to evolve a model where we said, okay, if it is something that you need to do on the ground level, we need to take these ideas from the boardroom, from these conferences, and actually help execute it on the ground. The condition for an idea like this has to mean that this idea has to benefit the majority. Now, it can't be something that is going to be benefiting me as a company or an organization or an individual. It has to really benefit society as a large. And I think Sakal traditionally has had that history. Now, I'm going to tell you something very honestly. I'm related to a politician, but we really don't indulge in either pro A party or B party. And the proof of concept is, or the pudding is what happened on that day. Because if as a paper, if you're aligned with somebody, and it's normal and natural for somebody to think that if you're related to an XYZ politician, and obviously when I look at politicians, when I look at their relatives, when I look at their nephews, nieces, whatever, I look at them with, a prejudice. And I can understand when somebody else is looking at us with a similar manner as well. But the reality is that there is an element of trust, and we have a very strong ethical policy. We had ombudsmen, we really monitor who we are giving publicity to, what, how, when. And the best people to talk about your paper is the very people that think that you may be prejudiced or biased. So with the opposition parties, they are the best guys to ask whether you really are a neutral paper or not. And I think we've tried our level best to maintain that. The editors have full freedom to publish whatever they feel like, which as long as it's not some character assassination and is well balanced. And that's been the tradition of Sakar. And I think that goodwill was generated over the last 81 years, which we believed was a very strong goodwill. But what happens is, every time I go into a media conference, every newspaper owner or the editor says the same thing. No matter who they are, they will say, we are the most ethical, we are the most balanced, we are the most cultured, and we don't do paid news, we don't do this, we don't do that. So how do you really distinguish? And if you talk to your audiences, I've seen papers or whatever which are absolutely, there are some owners who will actually tell you openly that yes, we blackmail and that's the way we do our business. They'll say it openly and the readers know it, and still they are very successful and they're leading papers. So which means that you may be not a credible paper, but you're still selling, you're still doing very well, and you still have the advertising. So does credibility impact circulation or advertising? The answer is no. But how do you distinguish? How do you still maintain your values? How do you not get into temptations and still try to drive a model which actually makes sense? And we thought that if we are saying all this, if we are really saying we are credible, is it really true? Is that what our people are saying? Is that what the audiences are saying? Is that what our readers are saying? Let's put it to test. I remember one day I was traveling and it took me about 45 minutes to reach my office from my home, which normally is a 15-minute distance, and I was like fed up, and I said, what is happening? What is this? Pune is becoming really into a nightmare. This was like a lovely city, very relaxed. People would come here to enjoy, and suddenly we have this totally disorganized, unplanned, chaotic system, which pretty much is in every other city in this country. So I called my editors, I called some of my reporters who was handling whatever, and I said, we wrote articles about this. We've discussed this issue. What is happening? And where are the plans? What are the local corporators doing, and so on and so forth. The new police commissioner had taken over, and in the city of Pune, and he was visiting us. And I asked him. I said, "What are your top priorities?" And coincidentally, he said, "Traffic is going to be one of my priorities." And I jumped at it and said, "Okay, traffic. So if that's going to be a priority, let's do something about it." So this was something which happened on the 15th of October or 16th of October. This is an experience which the commissioner and I had the first meeting. And I decided somewhere that I said, we are going to handle this issue of traffic, and we're going to try to come up with a solution for this, for the city. We created this concept where the first thing that we started doing was, I said, okay, if this traffic is an issue, I'm sure there are many competent authorities who are working on this subject. So let's start meeting every one of them. And this is a photo that the school children have done when on the bus day, when I'll talk about what actually happened, but this is something that they've done on their own. It's not something that we as a paper initiated. They took this photo, this one of these schools, and sent it to us. So the first thing we did was participation. Now here's what really was fantastic. So I had the first meeting on, you see one of these snaps in my boardroom right there. I think I have a cursor here somewhere. So then the center photograph there where, the police commissioner is there. And so we called all these, and we decided not to call all the stakeholders together. That's like the worst thing you can possibly do. So we decided let's focus on the bureaucracy and the administration guys first. So we called them independently and we said, okay, explain to us what the problem is. So the police commissioner started saying that we don't have police, we don't have the money, we don't have this, we don't have that. So we started listing down and said, fine, if this is the problem, let's just make a list and let's move on. Subsequently, we started meeting with the politicians, with NGOs, with anybody who was an authority on the subject, or general people at large. A whole bunch of people we started interacting, and we went to almost everyone who was out there. We had these meetings where we invited people, and what I realized that a lot of good ideas were coming in. There were reports made, there were studies done, there were all sorts of things multinationals had prepared, and so on and so forth. So we compiled all that data, we got everybody to participate, understood their opinion, and we did the following. We actually went out. I mean, although I'm an owner of a paper and I'm not someone who goes and does public rallies and whatever, I told my editors and my reporters to go and address people as if you are running a political party. So I went into slums, I went into these halls, and people at large were invited generally, and we started speaking our heart out, and we We may not be good at being a good orator or whatever, but we said like, look, we want to solve this. We want to understand what's happening, and we went to the very vote bank that the politicians have. And when we started touching in the vote bank, we got an unbelievable response, because suddenly the people in the slums and the masses at large were responding in a way that we never imagined. We ensured that whatever we were doing was accountable and was transparent. So everything that was happening was being reported in the press on a daily basis from that day on. That this is what is happening, these are the opinions, here's what's happening. And we gave it a very positive feel. We did not give it in a way where we were critical, or we were saying here is a problem, here is an idiot, he doesn't know what to do, he doesn't know how to handle the police or whatever it is. We said, look, here are the difficulties, let's look at a solution. We started working on this. We started spreading the word, so to speak. We designed a plan that what do you do, sort of with the authorities, made it simple, made it visual, made it graphic, so everybody knew kind of what everyone was supposed to do. We decided that 1st November will be the bus day. My dream was that, okay, if public transport is what you need, what do we have to do? And, they said we need about additional 1,500 new buses. So I said, okay, the corporation doesn't have 1,500 buses. Let's just go hire those 1,500 buses. Now, where do you hire the 1,500 buses from? So I spoke to MSRTC. I said, from all over the state, whatever buses we get, we'll hire them. I spoke to companies. We went to chambers of commerce, whatever. And we realized that there's going to be a huge amount of money if you want to hire these buses. But let's see. How do you get these buses? How are they going to be driven? Who's going to plan the routes? All these things were happening. Now, what we did was we went to all political parties. Every single one of them. I spoke to the Chief Minister, I spoke to Raj Thackeray, Uddhav Thackeray, Nitin Gadkari, Gopinath Munde, every political party, and fortunately they all are my good friends, and every single one of them agreed to help out. And the fact that the paper was a credible, good paper for 80 years, a neutral paper, everyone said, no problem, if you guys are doing it, we are on board. So it started with the politicians of every party coming in together from top to bottom, and we went down to the corporator level. So we involved all of them. We called all these guys, all the corporators to the meetings of all the parties, and we said, look, this is what we want to do. What are your ideas? How do we spread the word to the entire city? And because the response was coming from bottom up, they also realized that the people, their constituencies, their vote banks were telling them that, listen, we want to do this. We want to go by bus on the 1st of November. You got to support this. You better make sure that this is going to be a part of it. Suddenly we had all these politicians from all over coming and endorsing and saying, we are going to support this. As the politicians started coming in, the response we started getting was phenomenal. You see these little children, school kids, the schools got involved, the principals got involved, the Rotary Club, Art of Living. I got a call from Shri Shri Ravi Shankar. Art of Living wants to get involved. All their volunteers wanted. So all these spiritual gurus got involved. Everybody suddenly wanted to have this piece of action where they were all coming together for a common good to solve Pune city's traffic issue. Online support, you won't believe it. Normally, anything you do, you'll have a whole bunch of guys who are negative, cynical, whatever. If you actually went and monitored online, we did not have a single negative comment about this whole initiative. We had total 5 million people participating in this initiative. We created these new maps, like, you go to London, you have an underground, and you know what your tube is, which whatever. We designed these things. We took the expertise of the authorities who were out there, and we created how do we increase these efficiencies. These were like very new route plans. It never happened. The PMPL, the transport body, actually sort of adopted this entire underground plan that we decided to do. We got a huge support. These photographs are people from all walks of life. People went and decorated the bus stops. People went and these were the drivers. Different communities came in. All the religious communities came in. They said, the Muslims came and they said, we all are supporting this thing. And can you ensure that if Muslim ladies are traveling, they have a special status and this and that and whatever. So all sorts of requirements, and people were coming and saying, how can we help? How can we volunteer? The first check I got was from the housemaids, all the domestic bais who come and clean your homes. They collected 31,000 rupees and gave me that money, saying that, look, this is my contribution. All the panwalas of Pune, they came in and they said, we want to contribute. I had the deaf and dumb people coming in their own way expressing, and they collected money and they started contributing. So 5 rupees, 10 rupees, 1,000 rupees, whatever. People said that we want to participate, we want to be a part of this, we want to volunteer, we want to give you money. And the donations started coming in because we want to hire these buses. It was a very, very expensive affair. These are all genuine photos. outside my editor's line, there was a 1 kilometer line outside my office. So it wound up right up to a kilometer, where you see these bandwalas, you see school kids, you see NGOs, you see these little college kids coming in, doing all sorts of things and saying, you know what, on that day we are going to participate, we're going to travel by bus, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. And suddenly, before I realized, it was no longer a Sarkar initiative. Everybody owned it. So they had these little badges called Bus Day badges, the logo that you see. So the Congress guys were the youth wing, said put Congress Youth Bus Day. The MNS guys said MNS Bus Day. They designed their own badges. The shopkeepers, we didn't even distribute it. They were selling these badges, collecting the money, giving it to us. You can't imagine the sort of support we were getting from every possible quarter. And before we realized this was a groundswell, it kept on increasing and increasing as we went in. This was the magic. I got a call from the judges and the lawyers to come and give a speech in the court. And my worry was that what if we as a media, we're trying to do all this, what if someone in the RTI files a case or does something stupid? And I was like, if someone says, who are you to do all this? This is the government's job, not your job. When the judges called me and the lawyers called me, all the lawyers, every single one of them, and the judges said, we all are going to travel by bus, and if anybody files a case, we'll not even fight it, we'll not even accept it, because this is good for the society. So the judiciary got on board. The only component which didn't get on board was the media. The media blacked us out completely. So we had no support from the media, whether it's electronic or print, because they were probably obviously concerned that this is something that was not something perhaps in their interest. But what happened as a result was that we had to battle this on our own. So how do we reach to the non-Marathi readers? Ours is a Marathi paper. Pune has a large cosmopolitan audience. How do we reach to those English-speaking audiences? How do we reach to all these guys? But before we realized, the society had taken it upon themselves, and every single person, the hoarding association guys came and said, you know what, we're going to give you all the hoardings. We're going to chip in. The ad agencies came in and said, we are going to give you this money. So suddenly ad agencies, the hoarding association and all these guys said, we are going to ensure that this movement is a success. And whether it was Rotary, Lions, all these guys, started saying that we will ensure that we will volunteer. And I had a volunteer list of over 100,000 people registered with us, saying that we are going to man the traffic, we are going to give water bottles to the drivers, we are going to give all sorts of, we'll be there for the whole day, and so on and so forth. What happened was, on that day, there were ladies from various homes coming and doing aarti to the conductors and drivers. The conductors and drivers were feeling elated because never ever were people praising them and whatever. Here suddenly the people were taking care of them. Doctors went and conducted free medical checkups for these drivers, conductors. You had a whole celebratory sort of an atmosphere, and before you knew it, the unions of there were 6 unions in the bus transport. All these guys were saying that we're going to work hard. They were cleaning the buses. They were working for 24 hours. They said, listen, we're going to not take overtime on that day. Can you believe? All these guys, government employees, drivers, conductors, said we are going to forgo our pay on that day. We will give service. So suddenly you had conductors, drivers, and remember we got hired these 1,500 buses from outside the state. They were given training. They were given accommodation. Everything was being taken care of by the people. You had the cops, 2,500 police on the road, excited themselves. The police, their families, their wives were coming and meeting that we are very proud to be associated with this movement. All the bureaucracy was thrilled. The collector, the commissioner, everybody, their wives, their children, they were traveling on the buses. What happened was I went to Rahul Bajaj's home for dinner after that event, and his daughter-in-law was a dear friend of mine. So Shefali said, what have you done? We enjoyed this whole thing. Papa, which is Rahul Bajaj, said that on that day, nobody goes by car, everybody had to go by bus. So she said, when we had to get the vegetables, all of us had to go by bus, even to buy the vegetables, and my kids were traveling by bus. So right from a Bajaj family to a Kirloskar to the VVIPs, if you look at the snaps, on the first snap here, so you see the politicians and whatever, all these guys are there. Here you see a Swiss band. It was a Swiss-German group. They're playing the trumpets. The photo is not clear, but on the top left, that group was playing. You had these college kids. People were getting their bands. We had the chairman of Ashok Leyland traveling with us on the bus. So you had all sorts of people, from all walks of life on that day actually traveled by the public transport. And here's the best part. What happened as a result? So on we have a IT industry, so Hinjawadi, so Infosys and all these guys. About 150,000 work in the IT industry. On that day, 60% of them traveled by bus, about 30% traveled by carpooling. So this is what happened. This is a normal day, and this is like a normal day if you go to Pune even today. On that day on the bus, same time, this was the traffic. And the result for all this was the following. We reduced traffic on an average, because by the evening obviously traffic was different, but about 35 to 40% was reduced, and in many places the traffic was almost non-existent. These are government figures. The fuel saved on that day, the petrol pumps and all that gave a figure, and the government calculated that they saved over 35% of the fuel on that day. The pollution went down by 8% on that day. These are all Petrol Dealer Association of Pune. Okay, so it's not figures that have been printed by us. What we did then was we had you can't see this, but this is a 3-year plan for the whole day, because obviously we were like, okay, you do this on one day, what happens next? What happens to this whole traffic? So here from December 2012, which is the first month, to October 2015, we have a quarterly plan for everything. So right from, let's say, if you want to buy new buses, where are you going to get the funding from? Where do you park them? What happens to the salaries? What happens to the permissions? What happens to the extra FSI? How do you maintain them? Every action point that is needed to prepare a whole business plan was prepared with authorities, with everybody involved, right from the PMPL guys, the bureaucracy, the commissioner, the collector, everyone. And we all agreed as Pune citizens to implement this 3-year plan. And since November, every first of every month, we take a check as to what they've done, what are the problems, how do we solve it. And I'm very happy to tell you that so far 90% of it is on track. Today we are actually moving very, very strongly to actually solve the problem in Pune, and I'm hopeful that if you come to Pune 3 years from now, you'll actually have a traffic-free city. What happened to Sakar as a result? Now this, I didn't know all this. This Unni and his team, they keep doing all these studies. So they told me that this is what happened. A normal business, so right from this is October in the middle, we actually made 100% increase in our business on that day. So I asked my marketing team, guys, what happened? They said that the people was, number one, convinced that you don't need other media than Sakal, because since other media blacked out, and looking at the response and whatever, the whole city witnessed, whether it is an English audience or whether this geography or that geography, we don't need another medium, we don't need another paper. So suddenly the team was not only with their collars high up, they were getting respect from advertisers, from agencies, and saying, you know what, we'd love to advertise, and whatever rate you're saying, we're willing to accept, because you guys are good and we are happy to do this. And since October, when I asked yesterday how are the revenues doing, we're still on the same path. We actually exceeded our targets for whatever we had designed for this quarter as well. So it's actually making a huge impact, and we know that now more and more initiatives are being launched which are in similar manner. So we are thinking that, okay, what else can we do? So now people are coming and saying, can you do this in for the farmers? Can you do this for this? And we are creating models which we believe will be like a disruptive innovation as far as our own business is concerned. But what happens to those guys who've advertised with us? What happens to these guys? Now, 2 companies advertised with us, which never normally do. One was Tata Motors, the other is Ashok Leyland. When I say Tata Motors, as in the bus division of Tata Motors and the bus division of Ashok Leyland. Now, what these guys did was, Tata Motors actually went out and placed a full-page ad congratulating and thanking us. Well, that's great for us. But at the same time, as a result of all this, that entire 3-year business plan that I showed you was done with the help of Tata Motors team, Ashok Leyland's team, where they put in that business plan where we said, listen, we in the city need 1,200 crores worth of buses. So Ashok Leyland said, okay, this is what we're going to do. We will not charge you for the 1,200 crores of the buses. We're willing to supply these buses free of cost. It's in writing, but we will take, we'll operate it, we'll take a per kilometer rate according to whatever the corporation has set as a limit. So suddenly the corporation and suddenly the commissioner, everybody is excited that we are now going to get 1,200 buses without putting any capital cost. And this tender, the first tender is 800 crores. Both Tata and Ashok Motors are qualified for it. And for the first time they're telling us, nobody has the guts to ask them for money. So it's going to be a very ethical tender, open tender, because we've just opened it. But what we did was, we said, okay, politicians, I know you need to make money, run your parties and all that. If you actually do this, and if you allow us to function, if there's a profit in this company, we'll have a incentive on the profit, which will go back to you as employees, as drivers, as conductors, and also to the money will be distributed to across various entities, from various political parties officially for having delivered a good performance. And we, as citizens, we said, why not? If you're saving taxes, if you're making it efficient, why can't we pay our own people for supporting this cause? So suddenly it's a very, very different approach that we are seeing from these guys. And now they are coming and saying, what else can we do together? So the bottom line is, we started off not with I never started off by saying it's going to increase my business, what happens this or whatever, new advertisers, new clients, what have you. But today Ashok Leyland and all these guys are coming and saying that, can we do more business with you? Can you come up with another idea? Vodafone came and said, can you give us a solution for, something like this? And we've created something that Vodafone is so excited about that we're going to launch it pretty soon and with a very large budget. And it revolves around the following, what we call as return on respect. One of the things that I thought when I looked at all these return on investment, return on this, return on that, I said, what happens to return on respect? What is the use of me saying that I'm a respected company, but if I can't measure that return on respect? So we evolved this model. We said, okay, we will create something which will first have a social impact. The first circle is about social impact. You take any cause which is relevant to you, your business, which you're passionate about, you put it in a way where you can connect with the people, you mobilize a movement, whether it's at a small level or a big level, and then you must have a transaction component where you have to actually, hopefully make money out of it, but that's a byproduct. You're not focusing on that, but I believe that whatever we've seen so far is actually working. It will generate profits for you guys. So we call it the SAT ROR model. So how do you do this? It's very simple. You scan the environment, you look at the social issue that you are sort of not only passionate about, but it actually marries with your business. Now, if I had to take a social issue in Pune, I could have taken corruption, I could have taken education, this, health, whatever. There are thousands of issues, and so can all of you. But you have to take an issue which you can actually deliver, you can actually marry to your business. Like for example, we knew that we had to take advertisers like Ashok Leyland and Tata Motors as primary advertisers because it will help them directly. So you must know who to marry with what cause. You need to break them into sub-themes. You need to make it very practical. We spent a total 45 days in organizing this whole thing. 45 days because in my mind this idea came on 15th October. My entire team was mobilized about 30 days prior to that event. Within 30 days, we delivered entirely this whole exercise in a city like Pune. And I think our biggest achievement was getting all the NGOs together. Because NGOs agreeing on any one point is politicians will agree, but NGOs agreeing is very, very difficult. And we managed to get all these guys, with a very positive sort of a mindset. So we took these issues, those large issues, we broke down into themes, into plans, made it very practical. And we also looked at the various key partners, stakeholders who can associate with us, various advertisers and so on and so forth. We created content which was exciting and interesting. You see, we started with 2% content giving on this aspect and we moved it to almost 20% by the end of the day. Not one reader said, why are you pasting all these photographs and what you're doing and whatever. On the contrary, readers loved it. They couldn't care less what news we had missed. They couldn't care less what was happening in Delhi. They couldn't care less what was happening in Bombay or elsewhere or whatever. They were all interested and they loved the fact that we were giving them content. Our sales increased. People were talking about it. It was very, very sort of, participative and, it was a great success in that sense. Obviously, we created a revenue plan because when we were doing this, we as Sakal, we decided we are going to donate at least 2 crore rupees to this initiative. So we decided as a media house, we'll donate that money. And the society generated another a few crores of rupees. And from all these small guys, we had children, we had school kids coming in. One little child came, his parents were there, and he said, the parent told me that my son is in the 4th standard. He had this little piggy bank. And he said, I want to meet Abhijit uncle. And I want to break this piggy bank and I want to give this money for the bus day. You had children coming and donating. You had, like I said, domestic associations, slums, everyone. And it really broke my heart in the sense, to see this phenomenal response where, people who can't afford were willing to give money much more than any of the rich corporates who were out there. I collected more money. Then the moment we started getting all this huge response, the corporates started coming in and saying, okay, I want to pay you money. But will you give us advertising in return? Will you give this in return, that return? I said, look, guys, I'll design separate advertising packages for you, but don't confuse charity with this. Don't link everything to your profit center. I had more money from the common man than any rich corporate in Pune city. That's the reality. You need to have a very strong execution team. We had a total team of about 8 or 10 for this whole job. 8 or 10 very ordinary people from various departments. When I was starting on the bus on that day, I saw my union leaders, my workers, suddenly on the bus stops, what volunteering. Nobody told them to. But they were there till right in the night till 1:32, as if, we had won the World Cup or something. The whole team was charged. The entire employee morale in the company was, because everybody was coming and praising them. They're saying, you guys are great, you've done such a fantastic job. And that, I think, was the biggest incentive that any employee could get, that feeling of, being proud. We managed our costs, we knew what costs we had to get into, and we created a long-term plan, and we are ensuring that this is actually getting implemented. So we don't talk about this rubbish of CSR, 2% and all that. It's all, I think it's all hypocritical. Your business has to be socially responsible. Everything that you do has to be socially responsible. You can't have this little 2% and 10% and whatever being given. So we decided as a policy, no, whatever we do, this is going to be our way of life, this is going to be our way of business. So, we don't we don't call it CSR and all that. It reminded me of Yajna. I started reading about, Unni and I have this discussion about the Vedas. I'm an engineer, but somebody introduced me to the Vedas and Bhagavad Gita, and I said, look, all this thing that you tell me, please explain to me that where is the concept of a fuel injection system in an automobile? How does it work? Please explain to me that where in Bhagavad Gita this is written or in the Vedas. And I met somebody who actually explained to me exactly the science and chemistry of a fuel injection system in one of the Vedas. And he told me this whole thing in the form of a Yajna. And I love the concept so much, I said, okay, can you, that means, apply this for anything in life? He said, of course. So I said, can I apply it in my business? He said, of course, think about it. And therefore what we evolved was this whole Yajna of business model, which is quite interesting. So normally when we do a Yajna in home, those of you who don't understand, probably who are not from India, we have this thing called Yajna where we actually, you might have seen in the movies or something where if somebody's getting married, you have this fire coming out and, you're moving around it. That's one of the Yajnas that you do. But we have Yajnas to, do have peace in the home and, before we enter into a home and all sorts of, it's like a ritual that we have. So this Yajna thing needs, the first thing is the concept, in the sense, why am I doing this Yajna? Is it to have peace of mind, or I want to move into a new home or whatever? So this concept, this wish that we want to do something for the society is the first thing that we decided to sort of, start with. So you have to have the right intent, the right wish to decide what you want to do. The second ingredient obviously is the infrastructure. When you do a Yajna, you have these little bricks and whatever, you need to have the right infrastructure in place. So in the case of PBD, we knew that we had the facilities of a newspaper, we had all this infrastructure, we were gearing up that infrastructure to do it. The third thing was raw materials. When you put all those different types of wood and things like that, you need to have this raw materials. So we said, okay, do we have the raw materials to actually deliver this whole concept? So we managed to have those right people, right ingredients in doing something like this. This is the most important element, which is regulation. If those of you who cook, you know that if you're regulating, you must heat at the right temperature. If you don't heat, you're cooking something, and if you do it on high heat or low heat, it'll just destroy. So the regulating part of it is very important, and that regulation for us was in the form of the right type of coverage. How much do we give? How much do we increase the heat about this? It shouldn't look as if you're talking about ourselves or we're praising ourselves. How do you regulate the whole process going forward? The fuel. We needed the money. We needed something that you can actually get, and that's where we got from the society. We got all the money from charity, from donations, our own money, and so on and so forth. We did all this. We invested. And by doing all this, we ensured that we're not doing it for profits, but it actually just worked out in a way that it was not, because you were doing something with a serious intent, you didn't waste money unnecessarily here, there, whatever, and it actually helped our bottom line grow very, very stronger. The point is, finally, you have to be able to digest this. I can never understand a concept where a company comes and says, okay, we're now 100 crore turnover, now we're going to be 500 crore turnover. I mean, I come from Pune, where we are proud to say that I have only one shop and I don't have another shop. I think that's a great philosophy. Why should you have these crazy expansion ideas, give yourself stress and tension and all that rubbish? Is not necessary. So I decided to reverse that, I don't want to have any of these growth plans or whatever. We just want to have fun, stress-free expansion, and whatever we do, we must be able to digest. It's like your food. If you overeat, you keep on eating, you're just going to burst and die. So can we create something where whatever we design must be able to digest and digest healthily. And that's important for us. So really, it's about trust. I believe that we have to learn to trust each other. With all the prejudices, whatever one may have to say, you just jump into it, see if things work. And in our case, at least, it proved that whether I was related to a politician or whatever, all these things which were in my mind, that will people trust me? Of course, the good thing which happened was that after this, every political party wanted me to stand for elections and offered me tickets to stand. And some of the skeptics were also that maybe you did all this for political reasons or also whatever. But trust me, I have no interest in politics. So the point is, we want to be Bharatiya. And when I say Bharatiya, it's not about Indianness. I mean, when I asked, what does Bharat mean? The word Bha stands for light or energy, and Rath is those who devote or worship it. In some ways, you're moving to the, from darkness to light, which is why we lit that lamp before we started, so that it reminds us that you're moving from darkness to light. So really, if you can come up with something like this where you're true Bharatiyas globally, it would be a great thing to achieve. So inspired by Mahatma Gandhi, I think somewhere we just thought that whatever change we want to do in the society, we need to be that change. And I think with this, I would like to say thank you.